During a match, if you aren't already engaged in a firefight or playing the objective in some capacity, chances are that you are either in cover or moving towards cover. And using cover effectively is something that's easy to overlook because the act of hiding from someone shooting at you is pretty much second nature. However, there are absolutely things you can do to increase your effectiveness while you are in cover, and today I want to talk about those. My name is Brandon, and I am not a fan of getting shot, and I'm guessing that you aren't either. And this may seem obvious, but any time that you are spending out of the game because you have been tagged is time that you are not spending in the game, helping your teammates, playing the objective, getting tags. And ultimately, there's one factor that determines your survivability while you're in cover, which is your ability to minimize your profile and make yourself a smaller target, which I know sounds very obvious, but I very consistently see people on the field doing these things over and over again that make it easier for me to shoot them. And the most common thing that I see people doing on the field is flagging or signaling or telegraphing, depending on what you want to call it. I'm going to call it flagging. And flagging is simply the act of, in some manner, revealing where you are to the opposing players while you are still behind cover. When you are behind cover, you are a mystery. Even if an opposing player actually saw you enter that cover, they still don't know where you are behind it, and they don't know what angle, side, or elevation that you might leave it. And that gives you an advantage. However, if your elbow, head, kneecap, or blaster are sticking out past that cover, then they do know where you are, and they're basically just watching that one spot, waiting for you to finally peek out, and then they're just going to instantly tag you. You have actually made it easier to tag you than it would be if you were probably just running through an open field. Luckily, there are a few things you can do to mitigate this, starting with simply keeping your elbow down. A lot of people, when they hold their blasters, will kind of stick their elbow out at like a negative 45-degree angle. And if you can, try to get into the habit of keeping your elbow pointed straight down to be more or less perpendicular with the ground, because this will minimize your side profile so that only your arm, shoulder, and head are basically all barely sticking out when you go to move out of the cover. It's also very important to get into the habit of committing to your movements. If you're about to lean out of cover and you start to lean, and then you lean a little more, and then a little more, and then you move, you probably started to show your body early in that hesitation, and you've basically just signaled your movement way ahead of time. People react to seeing that little bit of movement, start to watch you, and then when you peek out, they will tag you immediately. If you're going to lean out of cover, lean out of cover. Just make it one quick, fluid movement. Hesitation will always get you tagged. Also, when you're behind low cover, the tendency will probably be to pop up. However, if possible, always try to go to the left or the right of the cover, because that way you can still keep your profile small. If you pop up, your entire head is shown even before your body is, and it's just a much larger, more obvious target, and it's bad. Just try to go left or right. And when you do lean out of cover, make sure that you are ready to engage a target the moment that you do that. Because the moment that you leave cover, either you're going to see somebody and you're going to take a shot or be in some sort of firefight exchange, or you're not, and then you'll go back into cover, or you'll move to the next piece of cover or run on the objective or whatever it is that you need to do. But neither of those situations require your blaster to not be at the ready. So if you're going to leave cover, have your blaster ready to fire. When you pop out, you have the element of surprise. You have the advantage. But if you pop out with your head, spot a target, then bring your blaster up, that time that you've wasted in that action will negate a good chunk of your initial surprise. And the easiest way to get in the habit of this is to take a step back from your cover. Sometimes people will call this muzzle's length from the cover. There's no real reason to be right up on a wall. It's a wall, it's blocking you no matter what. But if you can make some distance, you can have your blaster at the ready and just lean out and lean back. You don't have to bring it up or down. It's much more fluid and natural. Now, if it's a small piece of cover, like a smaller tree where backing up will actually expose you, then maybe that's not a good choice. And in that case, just try to bring the blaster close to your body so that you can be ready to bring it up the second that you peek out. At the very least, bring it up as you peek out. Even if somebody knows you're behind that piece of cover and that you might pop out, the fact that you are ready to fire the moment that you do drastically increases your chances of winning that exchange. Another thing that I see a lot of people do is stepping out to fire, or even just keeping their foot out while they're behind cover. I actually used to do this, and I got shot in the foot a lot. If I go back to my first maybe 2 or 3 games, easily half of the times that I was tagged, I got shot in the foot by a caliburn or a talon claw. If your foot is always out, then obviously your foot is always out. You've literally taken a piece of your body and you're just keeping it outside of cover. So don't do that. And if you step out when you peek, even though they might not know where your upper body is going to be, your foot is always in a consistent location. So you've now given them a consistent target to shoot at no matter what. This is especially bad if you peek back in and out of cover, because you're gonna put it in the same spot twice. Also, in my experience, most players who don't just outright miss will undershoot their targets because they either don't have the range needed to take that shot, or they're not zeroed for that range. And out of habit, they will aim for your chest or head or somewhere in that area, which means the dart will then fall and will most likely hit you in the foot because it is on the ground. You can also get hit with ricochets that way, assuming your club counts ricochets. So instead, when you get to cover, plant your foot firmly at a safe location at the edge of the cover, and then use your body weight and your torso to shift yourself to the side to peek out without moving your foot. You can also do this while you're crouched, assuming that you have decent enough balance to do that. Planting your foot will also remind you of where your cover ends, so that when you're moving, you can make sure that your arm isn't passing your foot before you mean to. But now we can talk about the more fun offensive things you can do when you're behind cover. Can I drink this on camera? Now, eventually you're going to need to peek out of cover on your offhand side. It's just going to happen. But if you do that, you're going to expose almost your entire body because it's everything from here to the left. So instead, when that situation comes up, you should probably try to do one of 2 things. The easiest thing to do, if your engagement distance allows for it, is to simply draw a sidearm with your offhand, and then keeping your offhand straight, lean out of cover and keep your profile minimized. I do this a lot, especially indoors. However, it's usually preferable to actually transition your primary blaster from your dominant side to your off side. And this is commonly accomplished by moving your stock from one shoulder to the other, then moving your firing hand up to where your offhand is on a foregrip or shroud or magazine or whatever, and then bringing your offhand back to the grip and firing mechanism. Admittedly, if you're not used to this, it can be incredibly awkward using your non-dominant hand setup to actually manipulate the blaster and fire. However, it severely minimizes your profile because you're only going to be peeking out by about 3 inches instead of showing off 75% of your body. There are also a handful of different ways to actually perform shoulder transitions, some of which are better than others, but that's a topic for another video. If you're using a smaller one-handed blaster, you can probably get away with simply bringing it over to your offside and trying to minimize your peeking that way. Just depends on what you got. And if you're using a Springer and for whatever reason you cannot prime or otherwise operate it using your offhand, you can also do sort of a half transition where you move the stock from your dominant shoulder to your off shoulder, but keep your firing hand and offhand where they are. So you're sort of reaching your arm across you. This is better than exposing your entire body, but you will be exposing the entire off arm, so it will definitely be sticking out more than if you had transitioned, but it's not terrible. And remember that if you are making yourself a larger target, keep that in your head, and when you commit to those peaks, really commit to them aggressively and move quickly to make sure that you aren't sticking anything out past your cover that you need to for longer than you need to. Transitions can also be very helpful if you're exchanging shots with somebody and for whatever reason you cannot disengage, because each time you take a shot, it's best to reposition yourself and take a shot from another angle. That way they can't guess where you're going to be and tag you. And if you're willing and able to transition shoulders, now you can more comfortably use the left and right sides of that cover and doubles the angles of approach. Finally, if you can put a lot of distance between you and the edge of your cover, such as behind a building or a very large wall, it can often be better to actually corner than it is to peek. And cornering is simply bringing your blaster up and then using the muzzle of the blaster as a sort of anchor point, pivoting or otherwise rotating your body around that point. This allows you to assess, acquire, and engage a target within your viewport while simultaneously keeping yourself completely hidden to anybody that's not in your viewport. And as you engage those targets, you can continue to pivot, which increases the area you're able to see and allows you to acquire new targets. If you're playing indoors, this can also be a great way to clear rooms, enter long hallways, larger spaces, or go between doors. In any conflict on the field, it's a game of odds. You are trying to do everything in your power to increase your chances of defeating a player, and that player is doing everything they can to increase their chances of defeating you. And using cover effectively, or at least thoughtfully, will absolutely tip the odds in your favor at least a little bit. If you have any tips for using cover, or you think that I'm wrong and want to 1v1 me, let me know in the comments down below. And if you found this video helpful, feel free to leave a like, do all those other YouTube things, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.